In the world of software development today, it feels like everything is about REST APIs. They're fast, they're flexible, they're everywhere. You'd be forgiven for thinking that older protocols are basically ancient history. But what if I told you that behind the scenes, in the systems that run our banks, our phone networks, and our biggest companies, there's another protocol quietly doing all the heavy lifting? It's time to pull back the curtain and dive into the specialist secret, SOAP. So here's our game plan. First, we'll get straight to it. What even is SOAP? Then we'll get into the great API debate, SOAP versus REST. After that, we'll break down how SOAP actually talks, see how developers put it to work in the real world, and finally, we'll answer the big question: why does this thing still matter so much? All right, first up, what is this protocol for heavy lifters? The key thing to get right away is that it's not just some old alternative to REST. Nope, it's a completely different kind of tool, built for a very different kind of job. And that really is the central mystery we're trying to solve here. It seems totally backward, right? We want everything to be simple, fast, easy. So why on earth would anyone choose a protocol that's known for being, well, complex? As you're about to see, that complexity buys you some incredibly powerful and absolutely necessary features. Okay, so at its core, SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. And really, it's a super strict, totally standardized way for different computer programs to talk to each other. The big takeaways here: it only uses XML for its messages, and it's governed by official standards from the World Wide Web Consortium. This isn't the Wild West of APIs, it's a world built on rules and ironclad contracts. So what do you get for following all those rules? Well, this is where SOAP's built-in superpowers come into play. We're talking about serious, enterprise-grade security and something called ACID compliance. Think about it like this. When you're moving money from your savings to your checking account, that transaction has to be all or nothing. You can't have the money leave one account and just vanish before it gets to the other. That kind of absolute, guaranteed reliability, that's what SOAP was born to do. And this brings us to the great API debate. Honestly, the best way to really get a feel for SOAP is to put it side by side with its much more popular cousin, REST. I absolutely love this analogy because it just makes perfect sense. A REST message is like a postcard. It's simple, it's open, anybody can read it at a glance. But a SOAP message? That's like a formal letter you've carefully folded, put inside a sealed envelope, and maybe even added a wax seal. Yeah, it's more work, but that envelope gives you structure, security, and the guarantee that what's inside is exactly what was sent. And if we break that down a bit more, you can really see the trade-offs. REST is super flexible. It can use modern formats like JSON. It's lightweight, uses less bandwidth, which is exactly why it's taken over the world of cloud and mobile apps. SOAP, on the other hand, is strict. It's XML only, and it's a bit heavier. But, and this is a huge but, its security standards are baked right into the protocol itself. It's not something you just tack on later. Okay, so if SOAP is this super formal system, how does it actually work? Well, it all boils down to two key ideas: the contract and the message. To get your head around the contract, let's use an analogy. Imagine you walk into a very, very particular ice cream shop. There's a menu on the wall, and it tells you exactly what flavors they have, what toppings are available, and the precise words you have to use to order. If you ask for something that's not on the menu, or you say it wrong, no ice cream for you. That strict menu, that's the WSDL. And that's exactly what the WSDL, or Web Service Description Language, is. It is the official, legally binding contract. It's an XML file that tells any application trying to use the service everything it needs to know, every single function it can perform, and the exact structure of the data it expects. There is zero guesswork. And once you use that WSDL to send a message, every single message has to follow this exact structure. It's all wrapped up in a required envelope. Inside that, you have an optional header. That's where things like security info go, and a required body, which holds the actual data. And if something goes wrong, a fault element gets added to explain the error. This structure is totally non-negotiable. Now, I know what you might be thinking. All this talk of contracts and strict XML sounds like a total nightmare for developers. But in the real world, modern tools actually make working with SOAP way more straightforward than it sounds. So when a developer wants to use a SOAP service, the whole process is pretty automated. They just find that WSDL file, that contract we talked about, and point a tool at it. That tool then automatically generates all the boilerplate code needed to talk to the service. After that, the developer can just call functions in their own app like it was any other piece of code on their machine. And creating a SOAP service is just as streamlined. A developer can write their business logic in a totally normal class, add one little annotation like @WebService, and then deploy it. The server does all the heavy lifting in the background, automatically creating that all-important WSDL contract file for everyone else to use. Pretty slick, right? Which brings us to the grand finale. We know what SOAP is, we know how it works, but why? In an age completely dominated by REST, why does this specialist protocol still matter so much? The answer is all about the job description. SOAP is the specialist you bring in for the really high-stakes missions. When you're building massive enterprise systems that demand ironclad security, when you're handling complex, multi-step transactions in finance or telecommunications, SOAP's built-in features for security and reliability aren't just nice-to-haves, they're non-negotiable requirements. And you don't have to look far for a massive real-world example. One of the best-known SOAP APIs out there belongs to PayPal. Think about that. They rely on SOAP security and transactional integrity to process payments and handle logins for millions upon millions of people every single day. When the stakes are that high, you don't mess around. You reach for the specialist tool. So at the end of the day, this whole debate about SOAP versus REST kind of misses the point. It was never about which one is better. It's always been about understanding the problem you're trying to solve and choosing the right tool for that specific job. Sometimes you need a speedy, flexible postcard, and other times you absolutely need a secure, armored envelope. And that really is the final question to leave you with. As you think about your next project or the systems you work with every day, ask yourself, what does this job call for? Do I need the quick, easy communication of a postcard? Or do I need the guaranteed, secure delivery of an armored envelope? The answer to that will tell you everything you need to know. Thanks for watching.